stop the puppy killing. You're a fucking idiot.
No, bro, you're an idiot. Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell is going to be linked at the bottom. Maybe you should get a copy.
Spoiler alert, he didn't even bother trying to get a copy or reading it before making this very pitiful attempt at a rebuttal.
This video was set so that I couldn't stitch it directly.
Tell me you're new to TikTok without telling me you're new to TikTok. You can't stitch a stitch. That's TikTok, not me.
Absolutely incorrect. Capitalism is not just the free market. Capitalism is not just commerce. Mercantilism existed well before capitalism came around.
First and foremost, I never said that capitalism is just commerce. I did note that commerce was one of the defining factors of capitalism. Furthermore, even though mercantilism was a market economic system, it was far from a free market economic system. And this is because nobles and states would grant monopolies to particular companies, which in turn not only restricted competition, but prevented voluntary trade between goods and services because only one company was allowed to compete in the market. Which is explained in this book, by the way. You can get a copy. It's going to be linked down below. Again.
Its main defining features are the private ownership of the means of production, wage labor, and profit.
And you say all of that like it's a bad thing. If you actually ordered Basic Economics and read it like I suggested you did, you would know that the average profit margin after taxes is on average 2.2% to 7.8%. This is because you still have to pay your employees, and you have to buy the materials to work with, make any needed repairs. That all costs money. And as a result, profit margins typically aren't all that big, and you would know this if you read Basic Economics, link down below. But what's often not talked about when it comes to capitalism is the importance of losses. Losses incentivize companies to stop doing things that are unprofitable or bad for business. Socialists like to complain that under capitalism we'd have more racism, but racism is extremely frowned upon in this day and age. Not to mention Jim Crow and apartheid were both policies enforced by the government, not the free market. These policies were quite unprofitable. White business owners in South Africa, despite the fact that they were not allowed to hire black workers, did it anyway because it cut into their profits not doing so. Which once again is discussed in Basic Economics. Capitalism literally has a history of encouraging people to ignore racist government policies in pursuit of profit.
It's exactly what it sounds like. It allows for individuals or small groups of individuals to own the means of production. So capitalists own things like warehouses, factories, restaurants, etc. And they use these things, these pieces of private property, to create a profit.
Which is actually a good thing. You see, the problem with socialists is they mistakenly assume that only the ultra-wealthy can be capitalists because only the ultra-wealthy can own capital. But this is because they confuse capital with assets. Assets can be anything from liquid wealth to property to stocks and bonds. Capital, on the other hand, is a lot broader. Yes, assets can be used as capital, but capital in a general sense is just anything an individual can use to make a profit. Are you a skilled laborer? Guess what? Your skill is a form of capital. Are you a comedian? Your jokes, they're a form of capital. Are you a professional baseball player? Your athleticism is a form of capital. Anything an individual can use to make a profit is a form of capital. And just about everybody has capital in some way, shape, or form. And you would know this if you read Basic Economics, linked down below. Oh yeah, there's a reason I keep repeating this over and over again. You'll find out at the end of the video.
Wage labor, which we all know what wages are. You get paid a certain amount of money for a certain amount of time that you worked. But the problem is, workers have to create more value. They have to produce more than they are paid. Otherwise, there's no profit.
Wrong. Workers themselves do not create value. The market does. And it creates value through the form of prices. What individuals or even businesses are willing to pay for a good or a service. And as we stated earlier, your labor is a form of capital. And as such, there is a price on your labor, which is a wage that you are paid for it. Once again, if you read Basic Economics, profits generally aren't that high because you still have to pay your workers for their labor. You still have to buy the machinery and make any needed repairs. And none of that is free. It costs companies and private individuals money.
If your boss paid you exactly what you were worth, he wouldn't make any money off of you.
And what is an individual human being worth? Because that sounds a lot like slavery with extra steps if you ask me. Anybody who's worked a blue-collar job knows that there are people who don't pull their weight on the job site. There are people we know that we never want to see again, let alone work with. It is a common joke within the blue-collar field that we tell useless workers to go apologize to the tree for wasting oxygen. There was a viral sound not too long ago of a Latino dude going, "Hey, Mr. Smith, how much you pay the new guy? $20? No, that's too much. He el stupido." Plain and simple, even workers know that there's a reason these wages and prices exist. Our labor is what we're getting paid for, not simply existing. And there are some people who are absolutely useless who don't deserve to get paid. And before you whine and complain, well, they would just starve to death. Is this you?
Imperialism. Imperialism, the High State of Capitalism by Vladimir Lenin.
This Vladimir Lenin? This the Vladimir Lenin you're talking about? The same Vladimir Lenin who laid the foundation for the collectivist policies that would lead to the Holodomor in the 1930s. You know, the same Holodomor that leftists and socialists like to pretend either never happened, downplay the significance of, or pretend it was the fault of the workers themselves. Millions of Ukrainians starved to death directly because of the policies enacted by Vladimir Lenin. Now granted, Joseph Stalin made it significantly worse because he was in charge by the time it took full effect. The foundation of all these policies were laid by Vladimir Lenin, who himself is debunked quite a bit, once again, in Basic Economics. By the end of his life, he was starting to reconsider Marxism and socialism in general because he was starting to realize its failures. By the time he died, he was starting to rethink a lot of his theories and was starting to move more towards a free market economic system rather than a socialist economic system. He literally turned back to all the private business owners he had previously confiscated assets from. Once again, it's all in Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell, link at the bottom.
Therefore, business under capitalism requires exploitation.
No, it doesn't, and there were even feudalists such as George Fitzhugh who actually argued against capitalism because it was at war with all types of slavery. But this is another flaw with socialist ideology, is that it hinges on the idea that all these negative traits such as greed, poverty, and exploitation are unique to capitalism or produced by capitalism, when all of these things existed for thousands of years before capitalism even existed. Poverty is not a product of capitalism, it's the default setting. Everybody has ancestors who lived in poverty at one point in time, even if you had to go all the way back to the caveman days. Exploitation and greed, they've existed since the dawn of civilization. And when you actually look at the facts, it's far less common under capitalism because it's not that profitable. Exploitation is extremely bad PR in a free market economic system, and as such, it's going to chase customers away to competitors. That's not even addressing the labor camps that were started by Vladimir Lenin in the USSR and later continued under Joseph Stalin. That doesn't even address all the sweatshops in the CCP to this day. So even if capitalism did incentivize exploitation, it's not like socialism has much room to judge anyway.
To understand the labor theory of value better, I recommend reading Value, Price, and Profit, or Wage, Labor, and Capital by Karl Marx,
which was debunked in Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell yet again. This is my biggest gripe with leftists and socialists, is that they always act like basic economics isn't valid because they read advanced economics. But their so-called advanced economics is all coming from economic theories that were written over 100 years ago and have since then been thoroughly disproven. Seriously, the original edition of Basic Economics came out in 2000, and it thoroughly debunks all the sources you're citing here.
You either don't understand capitalism and what it is at all, or you're just willfully ignorant and spreading misinformation. I hope this helps, and I recommend that you read the book that you linked to.
Link down below, my friend. I've already read it.